The fall of the Berlin Wall. The Berlin Wall would become a symbol of ideological division and suppression of human rights during the Cold War. It represented the Iron Curtain that separated Western Europe and the Eastern Bloc. In August 1961, the Communist government of the German Democratic Republic of East Germany began the construction of the wall and placement of barbed wire between West and East Berlin. Its purpose was to stop Western fascists from entering the socialist state of East Germany and stopping defections from East to West. It would continue to do so until November 9, 1989, when the East German regime announced that its citizens had the right to cross the border whenever they wanted. After the Second World War, Germany was split into four regions. This part was put under British control, this one under the Soviet control, this part under the USA's control, and this part under the French control. Over time, the British, France, and the USA zones will become West Germany, and the Soviet zone became East Germany. From 1945 to 1961, many German refugees flowed from the east to the west, which was the showcase of capitalism contrasted sharply to the economically poorer East. This included workers such as doctors, teachers, and engineers. Nikita Khrushchev, leader of the Soviet Union, had had enough and gave the East German government permission to close Berlin's borders for good on the night of August 13, 1961. East German soldiers, police force, and volunteer construction workers laid down barbed wire and a cinder block wall which stretched over 100 miles. As the decades went on, the wall developed into a more solid one, featuring a series of tall concrete walls, electrified fences, fortifications, and watchtowers that prevented people from escaping East Berlin. It was until the 80s when peaceful protests broke out throughout the Communist East, including East Germany, as the economic and social differences between the capitalist West and the Communist East were becoming apparent. Then, on the evening of November 9, 1989, the East German press secretary Gunther Schabowski made a mistake that would change history. He said, "We decided today to enact legislation that shall make it possible for every citizen to cross the border directly through the checkpoints of the GDR." But he was wrong. In reality, what he meant was that people could now apply to travel abroad in a few months, but not right away. But the words were said, the people had heard, and thousands were flocking to the border crossings. The border guards didn't know what to do with the tens of thousands wanting to get through. And so, without being given orders to do so, the border guards opened the gates and let the East German masses through the gates. And so the wall fell. The division was over and people were liberated. To the world, this signified the end of the Cold War. But it wasn't exactly the reunification of Germany. Helmut Kohl, who was the current leader of the West Germany, was in Poland at the time. So he rushed back to Germany when he heard the news and immediately started the plan for the reunification of Germany. He wrote a speech calling for the reunification of Germany, which he only sent to the other world leaders just an hour before actually performing the speech, so they wouldn't have the time to translate it and stop him. So on November 28, 1989, 19 days after the fall, he made his announcement.
Der Weg zur deutschen Einheit, das wissen wir alle, ist nicht vom grünen Tisch zu planen oder ist auch nicht zu planen mit einem Terminkalender in der Hand. Und abstrakte Modelle kann man vielleicht polemisch verwenden, aber sie helfen nicht weiter. Aber wir können, wenn wir nur wollen, uns schon heute auf jene Etappen vorbereiten, die zu diesem Ziel hinführen.
The speech was very popular in West Germany, but it caused concern on the rest of the world leaders. If we remember, the British, France, the United States, and the Soviet Union still had troops in German soil, and they had the so-called reserve rights, meaning they still had to give permission for the German reunification. Germany had been the enemy in 2 world wars, so any of these powers were very convinced on giving them back their allowance. It was time to gain the approval of France, led by Francois Mitterrand at the time, who knew that a unified Germany would be way economically, politically, and industrially stronger than France. But he had his own plan, and that was that it would be better for France to have this new fortified Germany by their side. So he accepted with a few conditions. One of them being having a single European army, having a single European foreign policy, and having a single European currency. So after winning the approval of France, Cole moved on to the next power, which was the USA. Leaded at the moment for President George Bush, who wasn't very hard to convince, as the USA didn't fear the power of Germany, having them an ocean away. Also, this will give them advantage in a way that this will mean taking a piece of territory from the USSR and will put distance between their European allies and Soviet troops. Finally, he had to convince General Mikhail Gorbachev, the leader of the Soviet Union. This wasn't as easy as the other ones because the Soviet Union would not simply hand over a client state to the rivals. They didn't only fear the power of Germany, but also that the USA, France, and the British would move their troops to the east side of Germany, having them even closer to Moscow. But Gorbachev was aware of the situation of the country and needed money to carry the Soviet Union into an era of modernization and hopefully keep the country together. So at the end, he accepted. But there were still some conditions. He didn't want any NATO bases in East Germany, and the Russian withdrawal was not allowed to be presented as a retreat. NATO agreed, and so West Germany sent a delegation to Moscow to discuss Germany giving loans to the Soviet Union in exchange for Germany reunification. By this time, 3 of the 4 powers had accepted, so the UK eventually joined the other 3 for the German reunification. And so it was done. The Soviet Union pulled its forces back from East Germany in 1990. The 4 powers ended their occupation of the 2 Germanys, and a single unified Germany had been born.